Hello, my name is Danielle Krause. I'm going to be talking about assessing problem behaviors and comparing the FBA and the FA, and then what my organization does. Okay, so just for an introduction of myself, my name is Danielle Krause. I currently work at a non-public school site that only serves individuals with autism or developmental disabilities. And then we do serve mild mod and mod severe autistic individuals. And I currently have completed several FBAs upon intake of new clients, and I've assisted the BCBAs with 2 FAs for a few of our students. So when talking about my assessment history, I have worked on indirect assessments such as the IFA and the FASS, which is a functional analysis screening tool. I'll go over those later and what those kind of consist of. I've also assisted my supervisor and the BCBAs with BB maps and several questions on the AFLs, which is a functional living skills assessment. And I also complete direct assessments for ABC data collection, and then I do visual analysis on those, exporting the data from our electronic data collection system, and then going through all of them to determine the functions that way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what an FBA and an FA are and the comparisons, and a couple articles that I researched and reviewed that compared the two different processes and what most practitioners or BCBAs prefer to do or what they are doing. And then I'm going to talk about what at my organization we typically do and all the rules that go along with that. So moving forward, first we talk about what is considered a problem behavior. We target behaviors, we track data on them. So why are we doing this? What is a problem behavior? Problem behaviors are continuous behaviors that may hinder social relationships, social communication. It may hinder the learning of the child. It also may cause self-harm, or they may be causing harm to others. So it's impeding their progress of that socially significant behavior. And then when we talk about some of the articles that I researched, the first article was a comparison of functional behavior assessment and functional analysis methodology among students with mild disabilities. In this article, it talks about how in the late 70s and the early 80s, researchers began to shift their thought process to focus from the form of the problem behavior more to the actual function of the problem behavior, to serve the individual better, to find out what was actually causing this problem behavior and why they were doing it. That way we can figure out how to assist them in engaging more appropriate behaviors. So for the FBA methods, there are 3 different methods under the FBA umbrella, is like I like to call it. There's the FBA functional behavior assessment. So the first type is the indirect assessment, which is that bottom of the triangle here. It has the where you're not directly observing the behavior happening. And I'll talk about that more also. Direct observation is included in those descriptive assessments, and then the functional analysis is an actual experiment of those behaviors. It's the control, and it's showing a functional relationship between those behaviors and the functions. So when we talk about indirect assessments, methods we use are structured interviews, checklists, rating scales, questionnaires that we obtain from information from those who are familiar with the individual exhibiting the problem behavior. So I do work at a school site, so typically when I have an intake of a new student, I will send these home with parents. I'll have the teachers fill them out. Most of my students do have a one-to-one aide or RBT that works with them. I'll have them fill it out as well as myself. And then it's just to get to know the individual better and what they see happening or what they've experienced, which is also why it can be not as reliable data because it's an indirect assessment. It's going off of information from other people. The indirect procedures, again, do not involve direct observation of the behavior. So descriptive FBA assessment would include a direct observation of the target behaviors that are occurring in the natural environment. It helps us determine setting events, antecedents, and consequences that may maintain that target behavior. There are 3 variations of data collection. There's ABC continuous recording, ABC narrative recording, and then there are scatter plots. So the ABC recording would be there's an antecedent, what happens right before the behavior, B, the behavior, and then the consequence, what happens right after the behavior. Continuous recording is going to be that check marking. It has a list of items and you can check mark. ABC narrative is more filling out what exactly happened. And then scatter plot is kind of looking at the schedule, and then when maybe I have a student that only engages in something a certain time of the day. So I want to figure out what's going on with that and what setting events may be causing that. So maybe after I do a scatter plot, I see the data and it's only a certain time. Oh, it's happening during math class. What could be affecting the student during math class? And then maybe I might go observe and get some ABC data during that time period, since it seems to be more prevalent during math. So the other article that I reviewed talked about among practitioners and what their preferences were for these recordings. So they used a 5-point Likert type scale, and it had strong disagreement and strong agreement, and respondents were asked to report their opinions about the utility of the various FBA methods. Most agreed that FBAs are essential for developing effective intervention strategies. I believe it was a total of 92.4% BCBAs agreed with that. A majority of respondents also reported that descriptive assessments were as useful as functional analysis, and about 1/3 of respondents reported that informant assessments were as useful as functional analysis. So functional analysis was first pioneered by Iwata, and in a functional analysis, there's antecedents and consequences representing those in the person's natural environment, and they are arranged in a systematic manner. We also call this an analog assessment. So for a typical functional analysis, we have recently they've added the contingent tangible condition, but there's typically 4 conditions, play being the control condition, and this is where preferred activities are available, attention is provided, no demands are being placed, and then the consequence for the problem behavior is ignored or neutrally redirected. For contingent attention is diverted to be withheld from the person. So if we suspect that this behavior may be caused by attention, we will withhold the attention until we see that problem behavior. And then the consequence would be attention is provided in the form of a mild reprimand. It could be a soothing statement. Any attention provided once you see that problem behavior. Contingent escape, task demands are delivered continuously, and then once we see that problem behavior occur, we will remove the task or materials and stop the prompting to complete the task. Contingent tangible is having access to a preferred activity or toy, preferred item during that, and then once we see that problem behavior, the toy is removed. So it would be my turn, the preferred activity where we are causing that behavior to happen. I might say my turn and remove that preferred item, and then we will see that problem behavior. The preferred activity or toy and then is returned to the individual. And then in the alone condition, it's a low level of environmental stimulation present. Problem behavior is ignored or neutrally redirected. So for functional analysis, like I said, typically comprised of 4 conditions. There's 3 test conditions: contingent attention, contingent escape, and alone. They've recently added the contingent tangible And then the play condition is the control condition. So alone condition problem behavior is expected to be low because reinforcement is freely available. There's no demands being placed on the individual. FA should be flexible and individualized, and each test condition contains a motivating operation as a potential source of reinforcement for that problem behavior. Okay, so let's talk about how we decide or determine when to conduct an FBA or an FA. So, an FBA is often conducted to find the most effective way to address a persistent problem behavior. So this FBA is going to include those indirect assessments, completely separate from the FA, where we are systematically experimenting to provoke or evoke that problem behavior to occur. So from the article, A Survey of Functional Behavior Assessment, Methods Used by Behavior Analysis in Practice by Oliver, Pratt, and Norman. The evidence base supporting FBA and FA to determine the function-based interventions grew within the literature on low-incident disabilities. Research on FBA and FA extended to the school, home, and other settings, as well as to students with and at risk for high-incident disabilities in the early 1990s. An FBA is, for myself, at a school district, it may conduct an FBA to identify special education and related services and develop or modify a behavior intervention plan. Typically at my organization, when we get a new student, if they already have existing problem behaviors, and they have been attending school and they have an IEP, they will have an FBA already conducted. It may not be as recent, but they will forward us those documents, and we will review them and then look at the functions of behavior. And we would also look at their current IEP goals at that time. But this information is used to maximize effectiveness and efficiency of what behavior supports this individual will need. And then also, according to that Oliver article on surveying of functional behavior assessment methods, functional assessment should be conducted when the student's behavior interferes with their own learning or the learning of others, presents a danger to self or others, or the behavior results in a suspension or interim placement in alternative setting. So currently there's no specific guidelines for when practitioners should use a functional analysis rather than using other types of assessment like the FBA. Typically, the use of FA procedures is determined by the skill level of the practitioner, the resources that are available, and the setting itself. So throughout the 1980s and into the early 1990s, the majority of research on FBA and functional analysis and functional communication training was conducted within clinical settings with young adults. And according to Lewis 2015, because FA involves the direct experimental manipulation of variables under controlled trial conditions, it is typically viewed as essential to empirically identifying functional relationships, but less feasible in the educational setting. So according to Lewis's article, it talks about how, of course, the FA is going to give you the control and it's going to tell you what is most likely the hypothesized function. It's going to, under those test conditions, but it's not always feasible in an education setting like a school. Like, do you have the time resources? Some FAs take a lot longer than like a brief FA. Or do you have the resources? Are the staff trained on even being able to run an FA? At my organization, I think I've only seen 2 FAs in the last year with my caseloads. One was due to severe aggression, and the other was a request from the district because the student behaviors were so intense that we needed an FA to prove that. So sometimes there are other variables that go into effect to determine if you can even have an FA. It also could be funding. Who's funding the FA? And then in the Lewis article, it talks the purpose of the study was to use the current set of common FBA practices to ascertain the degree to which the current FBA technology produces hypotheses that align with that are derived from the FA trials. So the results were the majority of FBA summaries were confirmed through the FA trials when both primary and secondary hypotheses were considered. So in this article, they tested FBA practices with FA practices to see whether or not they would get the same function that was originally hypothesized. So the results said the majority of their FBA summaries were confirmed through the same FA trials. Both primary and secondary hypothesis were confirmed. So it's showing that even when they did the FBA separate from the FA, they still got the same results in this article. So like I said, FBA many times, and FBA is used more often in my organization over an FA just because of time constraints. You may have extra components like it must be requested by district, or it may be for severe problem behavior. At my organization, typically, when we get a new student in, we do take about 30 days to get to know that student, and we review their documents. We add their IEP behaviors and goals into our electronic data collection system called Catalyst. We send home any indirect assessments to be completed or have the staff complete indirect assessments. We also take the ABC data and then we analyze the ABC data, and then based on those proposed functions from the FBA, we'll write probe goals, collect some baseline data, and then we will propose goals during our 30-day IEP. So typically the whole process from start to finish for a new student coming in would be about 30 days. And then some of the indirect assessments I use at my organization, like we talked about, we have the IFA, which is I'm trying to zoom in a little bit, is the indirect functional assessment. And we do this per behavior. So if it's aggression, it may say, does Johnny refuse to work on a task when asked? And then if the answer is yes, always, you'll put a 2. And then you'll continue that all through all the questions and add up, and it'll give you a hypothesized function based on the questions for that behavior. And then for the FASS, it is more question based, and it's yes or no answers, and then you add up the totals at the end. So it could say like, does the problem behavior occur when the person is asked to perform a task or to participate in activities? You just have to answer yes or no, and sometimes it's harder because it's like, well, maybe sometimes, and you have to give an answer for that one. So that one's a little bit harder. And then at my organization, we do use an ABC narrative data sheet. This is what I talked about. We fill it in, the antecedent behavior and the consequence. And then for the ABC data sheet, this is the checklist one that we discussed. And then these are just, these are not pictures of any of my students. I'm just keeping their information safe. This is just from Catalyst images that were on the internet. So we also use the recording ABC data function. You can see it here on Catalyst. So it'll say behavior, you'll select it. The next drop down will say consequence. You can also add in the antecedent, and then we'll export the data from there, and we can make graphs from it. And then looking at the graphs, it's all electronically inputted, and then recording data on the goals. You have your target behaviors at the bottom, and then we record our skill acquisition on the side. So my references for FBA and FA, I use the Cooper, Herring, and Howard 2020 edition for applied behavior analysis. Used an article called LaRue Clinical Corner, When Should a Functional Analysis Be Done and Who Should Do It? The comparison of functional behavior assessment and functional analysis methodology among students with mild disabilities by Lewis, Harvey, Green, McKenzie. And then the final reference is a survey of functional behavior assessment methods used by behavior analysts in practice by Oliver, Pratt, and Norman, 2015. So that was my comparison of the FBA and the FA. My name is Danielle Krause, and I will upload the list for you guys to watch. Thanks.